Hi there, it's Nicole here today with a plaid play stamped background. Creating custom plaid backgrounds is so easy with the Waffle Flower Crafts plaid play stamp set. It's got all of these different widths and styles of strips or long border stamps that you can use to create borders. My favorite style of border is creating one at an angle simply because it is so forgiving and a lot of little mistakes can easily be overlooked or they're not near as noticeable when you're stamping at an angle. My other big tip for creating or stamping with these more solid border images is to use a pigment ink of some sort. The coverage is so much better with a pigment ink as opposed to a dye ink. You could definitely use dye inks. You would probably want to use a stamp positioner tool of some sort like the Misty or the stamp press or something. But I am simply using acrylic blocks, some Distress Oxide inks because they have pigment ink in them. They work beautifully for this. I stamp them once and I get fantastic results. I think it's really fun to build plaids. You could do this in any color combination you want. So if you're looking for a certain color combination to match the project or theme that you are doing, this stamp set works perfectly. I'm using Fossilized Amber, Twisted Citron, Peacock Feathers, and Salty Ocean for my card. These are going to be the same colors I'm going to use for the accents on my card as well. And I think that when you're going, I like to go all in one direction and then I will move and come back the other direction. You could simply leave it at a stripe if you wanted to, but this stamp set is called Plaid Play, so we definitely want to try to create a plaid here just to show you what some of the options are. They're really endless. There are so many different ways to create the plaid. You definitely don't have to stick to just the stamps I used here. I think this design would look awesome in red and black and gray and maybe with a little touch of green in there for Christmas time. You could create some beautiful fall themed plaid backgrounds. Maybe take out the blue or the blues here, add in some oranges and reds and browns with that beautiful yellow and green. I think that would look amazing as well. Now, some of the images are a little, when you're going at an angle, they're not going to fit the whole length. So you can see I'm piecing together areas. It's not a problem at all. You can see, especially when stamping at an angle, it's really forgiving, like I mentioned. And so if you have to stamp it more than once, you totally can do that and line it up, and it's not a big deal. As I'm going back the other direction here, you can see how the plaid is coming together, how awesome it looks as those colors overlap. Once I get started, I do try to be able to stamp that same image twice, especially with a repeating pattern like this. So I'm doing my Peacock Feathers strip, or I guess I did it with the Twisted Citron here a little bit ago. Here I'm doing it with the Salty Ocean, the wider, bolder blue. So anytime I can stamp that image more than once and not have to flip my blocks or flip my inks, I do try to do that. Almost finished. I've got this last little corner up here that I need to fill in, and then we can start putting the rest of this Celebrate card together. Like I said, a plaid background could be used for all kinds of different occasions. Doesn't have to necessarily be celebration or anything like that. I'm doing a celebration card here. I'm going to stamp a whole bunch of these heart balloons from the Congrats stamp set using Versamark ink and heat embossing with white embossing powder. I want the entire balloon to have color, but I still want some of that stamp shape to show through, so we'll be doing some embossed resist. I'm sprinkling on some white embossing powder, and then I will heat set this. And then instead of coloring my images first and then die cutting, I'm going to do something I don't do very often, and that is die cut these hearts, all using that heart balloon die from the Congrats die collection. And then I'm going to add color with the ink blending tools using those same colors of Distress Oxide ink that I used for the background. Everything coordinates beautifully this way. And I just can't say enough great things about building your own backgrounds like this, whatever it might be. I'm a huge, huge fan of building your own backgrounds and creating your coordinating accents. Here's that great little heart die, and I want my background to be really full of heart balloons. These are all going to be dimensional, popped up with foam adhesive, plus they're going to have actual string on the back. Now, the thing about embossed resist is the embossed area will resist the ink. However, some ink is going to be sitting up on top of that embossed area, and you're going to lose a little of that white outline or whatever color you have embossed with if you don't wipe it off with a dry rag or paper towel. So after I apply the ink, I am buffing these pretty vigorously to get all that ink off, and it helps kind of dry the ink as well. The ink tends to stay pretty wet, and you don't want to get your fingers in it and get a whole bunch of finger marks. So I'm buffing these off, which helps kind of lighten the look a little bit, but I think they're really amazing. This also ensures that the color goes beyond the stamped and embossed line all the way to the edge of the die cut. I think it looks really awesome for this particular card. Maybe you don't always want that. I've created other cards where I have not done that with this specific stamp set, but I really like the look for this. So you still get that great balloon shape and outline, the little highlight area image there, but the color goes all the way to the edge. Now I've already attached a few of the balloons, and I've got a stamped border that I stamped a greeting from the Congrats stamp set on black cardstock, embossed with white embossing powder, and trimmed it into a thin strip. I'm going to show how I'm attaching all of these strings. I have tied them to the top of the balloon, or the little tail of the balloon, and added a little glue to that to help hold it in place. And then I'm securing the balloon strings on the back with Post-it tape. You could use washi, another adhesive. You just want the balloon string to be really taut, to stay nice and straight and tight. Now I kind of need to know where all my balloons are going to go before I add my greetings. They're going to overlap the balloon strings, but I need to make sure the balloon strings are in place first and that I've left room for the greetings. I've laid out my Celebrate die from Waffle Flower Crafts, and then I've laid out my strip that I stamped and embossed. And I do need to trim that down, and I'll do that in a little bit. But this is just kind of a placeholder, if you will. Then I am tying the really thin string. You could use string, twine, embroidery floss. This is some thin twine that I've had forever. I wish I could find another source for it because I absolutely love it. I have had these colors for years and years and years. If anyone knows where you can get some like this, I would love to know. But anyway, I would think that crochet thread would be great as well, which I also have quite a few colors of that. It's nice and thin, just something thin. You don't want the string to overwhelm the balloon. And I'm going to go ahead and pop all the balloons up with foam adhesive. I'm tying those little knots around the end of the balloon. And then I can attach them to the card, pull them tight to the back, and secure them. I forgot to mention my background panel here is slightly smaller than A2 sized. The piece that I was stamping the plaid background is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. This way it'll leave a nice border all the way around the background. Instantly adds a matte when you adhere this to a white top fold card base. And I want to place the balloons in an assortment so that no two that are the same color are close together. I believe there are 2 of each color that I used in the background. So there's 2 fossilized amber, 2 twisted citron, 2 peacock feathers, and 2 salty ocean balloons in this design. And I want to kind of tuck one of these balloon strings underneath another balloon. This is kind of the trickiest part of this design, is making sure you get all of the balloons and the balloon strings exactly where you want them to go so that some of them overlap. It gives it it's much more successful design when some of them overlap and some of the strings go behind other balloons and things like that. So the back is not very neat and tidy, but no one is ever going to see it. We're going to put adhesive on the back of this panel and put it on a top fold card base, and no one will ever notice. Now the dimensional greeting here, the Celebrate die cut, this is my favorite technique of die cutting a scripty word from cardstock that's been adhered to fun foam with Stick It. All of those little inside pieces from the word Celebrate, I'm popping out with a piercing tool. And instead of adding any ink to the word Celebrate for this card, I am going to place this right on my background as is, plain white cardstock. I think it'll show up a lot better as opposed to maybe inking it up a little bit. A lot of times I do like to ink it, but I really liked the nice simplicity of this white scripty dimensional greeting. I want to overlay that over some of the balloon strings, trim down my sentiment, and I am going to pop this up as well. There is some fantastic thin foam tape strips, or you can create your own. I'm using my own here, just trimming a really thin strip from some Scotch foam tape, and I'm going to pop this up, which is going to work a lot better with the dimensional greeting and the dimensional balloons. I need to trim off just a little bit of this where it overlaps a balloon. I don't want the foam tape upon foam tape. Pop that right underneath the word Celebrate. Trim off any balloons that might be hanging over the edge. I need to fill in with just, I think, one more balloon here down in the bottom right corner. Another tip for making grounding images like this is to have at least 1 or 2 or something like that hanging off the side. Trim off the excess. It really helps ground the images and not appear like they're just kind of hanging out in outer space. So here's my last balloon. Again, I will pull that to the back, secure it. Be sure to secure all the balloon strings on the front of the card when you're finished with a little dab of glossy accents to help hold that knot in place. Then I'm placing a nice strong adhesive on the back of this panel, popping it on the front of a top fold card base, and my Celebrate card with custom plaid play background is all finished. Thanks for joining me today for this custom plaid background featuring Waffle Flower stamps and dies. The supplies I used to create this card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Waffle Flower you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.